Hello, everybody. This is Glenn coming to you from sunny Southern California. It is a gorgeous day, not very warm, but definitely blue sky and looking beautiful here. We are expecting some rain later in the week, but right now, enjoying a very nice day. I'm going to have to get out and do a bike ride today before that rain arrives because nothing worse than riding on the wet pavement. You never know if you're going to hit a slick spot and spill and then maybe break a rib or something. So I'm going to have to do that later on today. But first of all, I wanted to come here and make a video about the league. As you all know, the season is over and it came down to the national championship game in the program football league between San Diego State and New Mexico. And as you can see there on screen, the Aztecs lose to the New Mexico Lobos 62-60. It was a game that came down to less than 2 points, and Phil Johnson's New Mexico Lobos get over and get their first championship in this league. He's been close throughout the last 3 years. He was in the title game 3 years ago, where he lost to Mark Jones's Appalachian State Outlaws, I guess. And then last year, he was defeated in the first round of the playoffs, in the college football playoffs in this league, by San Diego State. So this was a revenge game for New Mexico, who had lost their previous 2 meetings against the Aztecs. But as you can see here, Phil has gotten over finally, and he's got his first title. Trophy will be in the mail very soon. And this one really was an interesting game. It came down to a couple of key moments, in my opinion. Watching some of the players, the games, and just looking at the stats, it was a very close game, as you can see. And one thing that happened to the Aztecs was they got a fumble from CeeDee Lamb, their star wideout, who had almost 12 fantasy points. He had a huge game, a monster game, with 227 yards on 13 catches, including a 92-yard touchdown catch. But he had that one fumble right there, and that fumble probably cost the Aztecs possibly the game. I think you lose about a point and a half for the fumble. Perhaps he gets more yards if he doesn't fumble, and that makes a difference. Plus, he gets that 1.5 back. That was a big one right there. And then there was another play by Puka Nakua of the Lobos, where he was seemingly tackled on the sidelines by the Jets. Not by the Jets, but the Giants. And he escaped the tackle and went off to run down the sidelines for a 60-yard gain. Did Puka Nakua. And if that play doesn't happen, the Aztecs win their second straight championship. So as it turns out, the Lobos got their first title, and it's a well-deserved title by Phil Johnson, who's an excellent owner in this league and in the basketball league that I run. He is vigilant, he's diligent, he stays with it, and he's knowledgeable. He always seems to pull out some great picks, especially in this league. He's very good at scouting talent and bringing excellent players onto the Lobo roster and making them a very competitive and very tough to beat team. As you can see, their record this year was 13-2. Great season. He also took California a long ways this year. The Golden Bears is a team that he took over, I think, before last season, and they won their bowl game against Maryland, as you can see here, 47-39. That bowl game, in fact, was, just bear with me here and I'll find it. That was the the Citrus Bowl. You can see here is the final score on the Citrus Bowl. It was number 6 California taking down number 5 Maryland. California 47, Maryland 39. Jermaine Johnson, the defensive lineman, had 8 points in the game for California. That's another team that is run by Phil Johnson. And really quickly, let's just go through the bowls here and the results and talk a little bit about it. We already talked about the national championship game. Of course, that victory for New Mexico gives them the number 1 overall pick next year, and they do have some issues at quarterback. Bryce Young, not really what they expected, and there is some talk of maybe the Lobos ditching all their quarterbacks that are going to cause them a draft restriction and then going after the top recruit from next year's draft. And I'm not sure who that's going to be. A lot of people are talking about Caleb Williams. Maybe so. There's also Drake May from, I believe it's North Carolina. So maybe South Carolina. I can't remember where he went. But anyways, that'll be interesting. That's one of the best things about this league is the whole off-season deal, the transfer draft, and just, the speculation on who's going where. San Diego State will get the number 2 pick. What they will use for that pick is anyone's guess, but I will say that they'll probably have a wide receiver restriction next year. They're definitely going to have a quarterback restriction because of CJ Stroud. So it leaves running back open. I think it's pretty obvious that the Aztecs might be targeting a running back in next year's draft. The Cotton Bowl went to Georgia over Colorado. Good game, 47-42. Georgia wins it. Brandon Ayuk, the Georgia wide receiver, with 7 points. He's the MVP, and he will be graduating, I'm pretty sure, this season. So Georgia obviously has a big space to fill there in Ayuk's shoes, and I think that it's pretty obvious who the number 1 wide receiver is next year, Marvin Harrison Jr. I know that Colorado probably had designs on Marvin Harrison. They probably lost him by losing this game to Georgia, but there is one chance, perhaps, that Georgia doesn't go the Marvin Harrison route, and that is because they do need a quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see this offseason what Georgia decides to do. There could also be some interesting players available to Georgia via the transfer route because Bryce Young could be out there. Perhaps Trevor Lawrence could be out there. Colorado might be looking to switch it up at quarterback, or maybe they stay with Trevor for his final year, his senior year, and they go with a wide receiver pickup here. At any rate, the Cotton Bowl goes to the Georgia Bulldogs, 47-42. The Citrus Bowl was between number 6 and number 5. California at number 6, Maryland number 5. We talked about this one earlier. Cal wins it. Jermaine Johnson, the defensive lineman with 8 points, was the MVP. That gives Cal the number 5 overall pick next year. They may look for a quarterback, perhaps. I think they could also be in the market for a wide receiver. We'll have to talk a lot more about this down the line here in the offseason, and I will do a lot of videos concerning, players, where they're going to possibly end up, what restrictions are going to be in place, and just go over the possibilities. This is always a lot of fun, and I do plan on getting in touch with at least Mark Jones and maybe some of you other guys and doing a little bit of a little Skyping so we can talk a little bit about, speculations about what teams might do. I'm going to have to come up with the top 14 lists at each position. Pretty soon here, I'll be putting that together. Now, those top 14 lists are based on an entire season. So I know our season is over, but the NFL still has one more week to play. So those games will matter. And there are some bubble players who are on the verge of being maybe top 14 or falling out of the top 14 in this league. As you know, it's kind of favorable if you have, say, 2 wide receivers, one's at ranked 14th. If he falls out of the top 14, it prevents you from getting a draft restriction at the position. Same goes for running back and quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how this next week plays out. It still has some bearing on our league for the offseason. The Holiday Bowl between the number 8 Michigan Wolverines and the number 7 Penn State Nittany Lions went to Michigan, who ends the season at 9-6, I believe. Michigan pretty big over Penn State as expected, 52-32. Penn State kind of fortunate to get close as they did. They almost made it to the Final Four because San Diego State was without CJ Stroud in the Fiesta Bowl, and Penn State lost that game, as we know, and they ended up playing against Michigan here in the Holiday Bowl after losing their next week's game against California, if I'm not mistaken, and they end up going down pretty badly here in this one. That means Penn State has the number 8 pick next year. The Gator Bowl went to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They beat Alabama in a well-fought game, 61-52. I believe Alabama was 0-3 on the season against Ohio State. These two teams played back-to-back games. It's just the way the bowl situation works out. So the Gator Bowl goes to Ohio State. They hold on to that number 9 pick going into next year. And again, we're going to talk more about, who might want what. I have to, really do a good in-depth study, but I wanted to do this video pretty quickly because the season just ended and I just wanted to put some closure on it, put a cap on the season. So we will get into this stuff, and I'll probably email you the videos so that you don't have to keep coming back to the site. I know football is going to be out of your mind now for a while because the season is over, but we have a very eventful offseason coming. The Las Vegas Bowl between number 12 and number 11. Texas coming in at 12th and Tulane at 11th. Texas wins the game 47-35. Isaiah Pacheco, the running back, with 10 points. He's the MVP. So Texas moves up to 11th in next year's draft. Tulane drops to 12th. And finally, the Sun Bowl went to Fresno State, who managed to send Oregon to their 14th defeat of the season. I think maybe, yeah, Oregon was 0-14, I believe. Let's have a look over here just quickly. Kind of didn't get prepared for this video today. No, they went 0-15. So these records that they're showing on the bowl games, they were records coming into the game. I should have known that before I made the video, but at any rate, you guys know me. We're just going over things real quickly here. I just wanted to say a few things about the bowl games and get back to you guys later on this. Like I say, I'm going to try to Skype with Mark and we'll talk a little bit more in depth on what's coming in the off season. Of course, the NFL draft isn't until late April. Always a good time. We'll probably be talking a lot about players when that draft goes down in not that far down the road, actually. It's only about 4 to 5 months away, about 4 months away. So we'll be talking NFL rookies pretty soon here. And this league is probably one of the few football leagues, fantasy football leagues, that has a very active offseason because of the nature of the league, that we draft rookies. We have a 7-round rookie draft each offseason. And teams have excellent opportunities to improve their teams, especially in the first and second rounds of these drafts. At any rate, Fresno State wins it 33-29. Good start to the season for Fresno State. They struggled definitely down the stretch, but they did manage to pull this one out. They will have the 13th overall pick in next year's draft, and Oregon will get the final pick. And of course, they get the wraparound pick. That means they get the first pick of the second round. And we've seen what teams like Alabama and California could do with those types of picks. 13th and 14th, they were able to build their programs, make them better. So all is not lost for Oregon and Fresno State. Of course, Oregon will be bringing back Justin Herbert next year to play quarterback, and Fresno State has a quarterback in Kenny Pickett, although his time might be limited there in Pittsburgh because he's not exactly setting the world on fire. But it will be interesting to see what these teams do with their picks at the end of the first round and beginning of the second round next year. So at any rate, again, we have a busy offseason ahead of us. And looking at the standings here at the end, you've got New Mexico possibly in need of a quarterback. If they don't go quarterback, they do have probably no draft restrictions at running back. San Diego State, no restrictions at running back, and they're likely to target that position. The Maryland Terrapins, they didn't end up third overall. Their record was such, but they ended up a little further down in the standings. But the Terrapins, of course, do need a quarterback. They lose Joe Burrow as he graduates this offseason. Michigan Wolverines, they didn't end up in the fourth position. They had a record good enough for that, but they did win the Fiesta Bowl, good for the seventh pick, and they have a quarterback. Not really sure about what other restrictions they might have. We'll get into that later. Georgia Bulldogs, they definitely need a quarterback. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Maybe they pick up somebody in transfer or they go for the best rookie they can get, but there's a good chance that maybe they only have the second or third best rookie available to them. They did win over Colorado, so in all likelihood, they have either a great transfer pick or the second best overall rookie prospect coming their way. Colorado Buffaloes have Trevor Lawrence right now. They could put him out there as a transfer candidate, and he could slip. Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, these guys could slip all the way to the middle of the pack. And teams down the line like California, maybe Alabama, Penn State, teams like this are going to have a shot, maybe even Fresno State if they don't protect Pickett. This is why I'm going to try to get it through to you guys, make some videos. You got to watch them and realize what's at stake here. You don't necessarily want to hold on to your quarterbacks if they're mediocre. Float them out there in transfer because you don't necessarily lose them. And in fact, you could either upgrade or get your guy back. For example, even the Aztecs wouldn't be stupid to just say, hey, why not? Let's put Bryce Young on the market, see what happens. At worst, they lose Bryce Young, but they're able to transfer in someone like Trevor Lawrence, or not Bryce Young, I meant C.J. Stroud. San Diego State floats C.J. Stroud. Maybe they get Lawrence in transfer, or they get Bryce Young in transfer, or somebody else in transfer that was good last year that's out there, or they get the top rookie pick. There's a good chance of that because if New Mexico was to stick with the guys they have, Then now San Diego State has given up CJ Stroud, but they now can draft whoever they want in next year's rookie draft. So don't feel like just because you have a quarterback who's functioning right now in this league, and it's important to have a guy who's playing, but don't feel like you have to protect him. Float him out there and transfer. At worst, you get him back. At best, you get a better guy, a guy with more promise. That's the way this league works, and I'm going to really try to pound this into you guys' heads this offseason, especially those of you that maybe haven't been as in tune with this league as others. I know that guys like Mark Jones get it. Phil Johnson gets it. I think Gerald gets it. There's a lot of you guys that, understand what's going on here. Maybe Ben Johnson gets it to a certain extent. But seriously, it doesn't hurt to float a guy and transfer. At worst, you get him back. At best, you get a better guy. You got to understand the transfer market if you're going to go forward in this league and make the most of it. At any rate, going down the line here, I was talking about Colorado a little bit. They could be in the market for a quarterback. Definitely might want a wide receiver. California, another team that might float all their guys and transfer to see if they could score something better or just get back what they had. At any rate, this is going to be an interesting offseason. And again, I'm going to get with you guys quite a bit here. There's plenty of months between now and the draft even, which starts this year in August. It'll be late July at earliest. We're going to probably do the transfer draft after the rookie draft. That's different from previous years where we did the transfer draft first. The reason for that, I don't know. I don't want to get into all that right now. But the way it'll work is if in the rookie draft you take a player like a wide receiver, running back, or quarterback in the first or second round, that player will be considered to have a draft restriction attached to them, a potential. They'll be like considered a top 14 guy. So they could potentially cause you a draft restriction. And again, I'll write the rules on this, make it clear for you guys. I'll send out emails and we'll talk about it on videos. Probably talk about it with Mark Jones. I want to make sure you guys understand everything. Trust me, it's not complex. Don't get nervous. Don't squirm. This was actually Phil Johnson's idea. He already is down with the idea. He would rather have the transfer draft after the rookie draft. I guess it's just because they want more knowledge of the players and just it's a strategic thing. And it makes sense to me. I mean, let's do the transfer draft after the rookie draft. But again, if you take a wide receiver / quarterback / running back in the first two rounds of the rookie draft, they will be considered to be a top 14 player. And they could potentially cause you a draft restriction. And you guys know those rules. It's if you have two top 14 running backs, two top 14 wide receivers, or one top 14 quarterback, that will cause you a draft restriction. So that just about does it. I'm going to wrap the video at this point. Congratulations to Phil once again. I should have that trophy by the end of this week. Then I have to mail away for the plate, have to figure out, what I'm going to put on the plate, just make sure everything's spelled right and all that good stuff. Then they mail me the plate, and then I put it on the trophy, and then I got to stick it in the mail, and it's going to be in your hands. So again, guys, enjoy the offseason. Enjoy the rest of the NFL playoffs. Enjoy the college football bowl games and big championship games. I saw Washington pulled off a big win over Texas. Kind of surprised at how far the Huskies have gone. And I saw that the Michigan Wolverines took care of business against Alabama. Crazy season Michigan's having. And I got to be honest, as an Oregon Duck fan in real life, I'm rooting for you, Michigan. Take those damn Huskies down. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.